My passage through the jungle northwards took only a few days, as this was little different than how the pathbreakers would reconnoiter a new world, as quietly and quickly as possible. The gifts afforded to me by my new attire, as well as my own magics, further made this journey one of both speed and stealth. The land north of the jungle, and leading to the volcanic mountain ridge that lie between myself and the promised avenue of exit from this world, and hopefully back to the home realm, was a dry, blasted wasteland, roamed by creatures of monstrous size. It would appear that the terrors that inhabit the jungles were only the runts of these much larger and greater saurian beasts. Fortunately, the same skills that allowed my unaccosted passage through the jungle served equally well here, and while it took me longer than I had hoped, I made it to the foot of the ridge without conflict. The ridge, and the mountains and volcanoes it contained, were vast, and after a few hours looking for an ideal place to begin my ascent and crossing, I came upon a small forest nestled between two rocky spurs. The forest was in the valley between. After ensuring that there were no threats, and with dusk and heavy dark storm clouds rapidly approaching, I made camp under the branches of those woods. I made only a small fire, as I was in more need of light and a small bit of warmth to counter the chill of the heavy storm that was raging above, than I was in any need to cook or the like. Tranos was racing and bounding about the nearby trees to work off the nervous energy that had built up over the past few days of being restrained and stealthy. The storm had lasted for 3 days, raging unabated and filling the entrance to this valley with deep pools of water, cutting off an easy exit, or entry. I took the time to prepare and continue to train, expanding my skill set with my new staff, as well as further practice with my new magical discoveries I had made, new incantations and rites prompted by my continued study of the tome Tranos recovered from the ancient empire. I would end the day with a few hours of playing with Tranos by playing fetch, collecting my thoughts for the day as we did. The sounds of his blinking and the soft yet deep rumble of his thrusters as he turns them on and off, blinking mid-thrust to go in an entirely different direction as he chased the small ball Ounca had crafted for him, all made me smile as I began to finalize the plan for the next leg of our journey. The crossing of the ridge and avoidance of the Antani that were said to live here in an unknown number. Once more tossing the ball, Tranos, after the normal spirited chase and capture, raced back with it firmly in his jaw. However, he jumped over me, and as I turned to follow his movement, I saw him dropping the ball at the feet of its creator, and my smile only widened as Ounca picked it up and walked to where I sat next to the fire, sat down, and tossed the ball behind him, much to Tranos' delight. He explained he had intended to meet with me before I had made it to the Badlands. However, I was faster than he had anticipated, and he had only caught up now due to me staying in one place for the storm. As we talked and tossed Tranos' ball, Ounca told me he intended to join me. He wanted to see the greater realms, and felt I would be good guide and company. Welcoming him with a full-body tackle, Tranos made his thoughts on the matter clear, and I was laughing too hard at the sound of Ounca trying to get all three of Tranos' head to quit licking him in excitement to welcome his company myself. With that matter done, we began to speak of the realms, her history and customs, as I tried to prime him on the broader points of each of the realm's people and the history that had shaped them. After a few hours, which he had listened to quietly and attentively, he had a single observation and question. He was curious why the V's were the ruling gods, when they came after the great heroes, and why they were barely mentioned. Did they not start the pushback that led to the daemon's final downfall? It was a good question. By the 9 and 4, welcome back to the library. I am the recorder, and today, in our 6th Divine Discussion, we're going to take a brief look at the 3 great heroes, Camille, Vapor, and Monroe, the first mortals to defeat Vanson and to be granted godhood for their works. As regular visitors and perceptive patrons are no doubt aware, this will be just an overview of these pivotal members of Realms history. To begin with, it must be noted that due to the chaos of the reign, records are sparse, conflicting, and often fabrications. Therefore, the exact events that led to the selection, training, rise, and eventual victory of the 3 great heroes are unknown beyond a few agreed upon points. 1. Each of the heroes was a noble or of the ruling bloodline and was in service to their people when they were chosen. 2. Each were unrealized paragons of their people, needing only the right instruction and practice to see their aptitude and skill expand by orders of magnitude. And 3rd, each was thought killed in a defiant last stand or an ambush by the daemon or his forces. What is now known is that they were the first Hands of Destiny, chosen by the Hand of the Nine Wings for personal training and preparation for dealing with the Vanson issue. Each saw their personal power grow, their skill set expand, and their abilities magnify, not only via the years of intense training and instruction by the Hand, but equally by the weapons and other artifacts given to them by him for their task. By the end of their time with the Hand, each was a locus of power and ability, able to battle entire armies by themselves. Together, they were set to end the reign once and for all. They are recorded as appearing during the final siege of Polaron, where their intervention in the beginning acts of that engagement saw over half the enemy force destroyed in a single day, breaking the siege before it had fully begun. After spending the next day scouring the nearby countryside for any escaped foes, the heroes made their way to the next place under the daemon's threat. It took an unknown amount of time for them to free the majority of the world, but with well over half the planet now free of the daemon's predations and able to fully contribute to fighting the remaining forces of the demon. It had finally become time for the heroes to begin striking directly at the daemon's home, somewhere on the cursed continent of Fulgeria. In the vast, cursed, and ever-shifting swamps where the temple that housed the means of Vincent's defeat was built, the heroes waged a three-man war against the most foul and powerful of the demon's servants, in a campaign that lasted so long that by their eventual victory over Vincent, most of the rest of the world had been liberated. After years of combat, they found themselves within the very place that had brought the demon into Jam'mR, and were quickly fighting the most important battle to have been waged until that point of history. Again, how long the battle took is unknown, nor are many details, as the heroes were never recorded as speaking up to the details of the fight, and it is assumed that the horrors they bore witness to were of a nature that is best left unspoken. However, they did eventually prevail, but found themselves unable to actually kill the demon, for his life was being sustained in a manner beyond the understanding of the heroes. As they watched the beast slowly begin healing, they settled for the second best option: containment. Using the very artifact that had brought him to Jam'mR, and by sealing it afterwards with another artifact created in this very process, the heroes sealed Vincent away, much diminished and lacking the support of the dark wall that initially summoned him, most of whom had been slain, with only a few of the upper leadership still unaccounted for. There was no force that could even threaten to undo the seals the heroes had created. The Analar were a broken, scattered, and much weakened people, content to hide from sight and reprisal, and use their sky cities to do so. The dragons were similarly scattered, having suffered the sundering, and seeing their own powers curtailed. They had broken off into various factions, many of whom considered the mortals in their path no longer of any concern of dragon kin, and thus many dragons began to actively hunt, battle, and bring harm to their former charges. With the world saved and beginning to heal, the heroes became gods, rewarded for their service to Jam'mR by the Nine Wings himself, it is said. Over the next few decades, perhaps a century, they settled their affairs on the mortal plane. Camille punishing his kin and kingslayers of Mount Hope. Vapor oversaw the completion of the Crystal Basin, where the ambient energies of the demon's taint would be drawn from the world and contained. And finally, Monroe established the Monrovian Order, a knighthood tasked with the protection of the civilized peoples. Their works now finished, this is where the three great heroes' story ends. For all but the most trusted of people. You see, for all but the gods and their most trusted allies, the heroes departed for eternal reward and pleasure, when in fact they had been indeed present at several points during the Age of Valor, and during the rise of the V's. The reason this is not spoken of is the reason why there was even a need for the V's. The betrayal of the heroes and of Jam'mR by none other than Monroe. During the battle with Vincent, a deal was struck by Monroe to see the beast defeated, but with a path to return many centuries later. His reasons are not known, or not recorded, but it is known that he was the only one aware of this pact, as Vapor and Camille were murderously enraged when this came to light. It was discovered by the V's in their own wars against the Daemon. It was discovered that due to this pact, Monroe was serving as a tie to aid Vanson in his multiple attempts to return to Jam'mar to finish what he had started. By the end of the Age of Valor, Monroe, his perfidy now laid bare to the gods, met his end at the hands of an unrecorded executioner. And Vapor and Camille, out of fear that Monroe's taint might have in some way been shared with them, chose to exile themselves from Jam'mar for the rest of time. Out of a desire not to bring shame to either Vapor or Camille, who, by all rights and indications, had not done anything amiss or wrong, the crimes of Monroe were left a godly, private matter. And without his presence, his order of knights soon faded away into the pages of history, as did most memory or interest in the heroes themselves, beyond historical notation. They still are venerated for their part in ending the reign, but in the consciousness of the public have been far overshadowed by the acts and victories of the V's. And that, my perceptive patrons and regular viewers, is where we shall end this entry. I hope you have a better understanding of the heroes, as well as the part they played in the history of the realms. I, as always, have been the recorder, and I thank you for your time, interest, and support. Thank you. Now, until you next find your way back to the library for another entry, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves, and each other. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching.